I have a suspicion that we've all been taught the same rule, and that is do not gossip. Don't talk about people behind their backs. If you have anything bad to say, don't say anything at all. All those classic sayings we know inside out. But the interesting thing about what we've been taught is that gossip is one of the few social strategies that has stood the test of time. Gossip is one of the most common human behaviors, and it has been around across ages, across societies, and across cultures. We all do it. We've all done it. So today's episode, is about asking a more honest question, and that is gossip really that bad? I know what this looks like. I know what it sounds like. Trust me, I have gone through this the whole time I've been creating this episode. I just have sat back and thought, wow, it really sounds like I'm making a case for gossip. It's giving XOXO Gossip Girl. And I just want to make it clear that that is not what this is about. I'm personally trying to understand my own inclination towards gossiping. I've noticed an uptick in my gossiping recently. It's something that I'm not proud of. It's made me feel a bit of shame, a bit of self-rejection. It's made me stop and pause to think, why do we do this thing? Is it something to be so hard on yourself for? And if we are going to do it, is there a right way to do it? Hello, everybody, and welcome to Time for Us. I am Danielle Wallace, Danny Wallace, and I'm your host. Welcome to my studio. This here before thine eyes, lies my home studio that is in the second bedroom of our house, a little apartment house thing. And I just would like to digress and say that it's been an experience and a journey. We have been here for several months, and this room has been nothing but a laundry room, a storage room, an absolute mess. And it's been quite selfish. I felt quite bad about it because I set all these high goals for myself and said that I needed the studio space, and have proceeded to literally not even set foot in here. Not exaggerating. Literally not set foot in here once in the last, 6 months. So here we are. Welcome. It's all a work in progress, but I love you guys for joining me on the journey. Yeah, stay tuned. We're going to start this episode by defining what gossip is, and the only way I could think of doing that was to start it the way that any really shitty speechwriter starts their speech, which is with dictionary definitions. Okay. So firstly, we have Oxford Dictionary, which defines gossip as casual or unconstrained conversation about other people, typically involving details that are not confirmed as true. Merriam-Webster says it's rumors or information about the behavior or personal lives of other people. Then we have Cambridge, which describes it as a conversation about people's private lives that might be unkind, disapproving, or not true. Okay. I thought it was interesting because there is a little bit of nuance across those three definitions. And now we go on to the academic definition of gossip. Frank McAndrew from Knox College is a professor of psychology studying social behavior from an evolutionary perspective, defines it as such. By definition, gossip is any talk about someone who isn't present. It typically involves information that allows for moral judgment, and it is entertaining rather than instrumental. And what's interesting about that is that gossip is not necessarily defined by lying. It's defined by absence. So it's talking about someone who isn't there. Our next question that we beg the answer to is, why the fuck do we gossip at all? Well, based on the research I've done, gossiping is important because social information matters. It's of high importance and always has been to us. So when I say social information, I mean, from an evolutionary perspective, us understanding the people that we could trust, people that were safe, people who behave well, those that violate social norms, and those that should be avoided for whatever reason, were all really important for our survival. So this is something we've been doing for, I think, as long as we could probably utter words and communicate with one another. And that is the sharing of social information. What is even more interesting about this is that sociological and psychological research shows that gossip actually forms a sort of informal reputational system. So it's a way that groups regulate information and also enact punishment based on the information that they have. I mean, that makes perfect sense. So it's like, by knowing that someone can talk shit about you, there is a part of you that feels they need to keep themselves in check. It's also like a survival strategy, I guess. It's a way of ensuring that you are still accepted into the clan, accepted into the group. In a way, we can actually be grateful for gossip. It's a way that groups regulate behavior without the need of formal punishment. I think that's fucking cool, actually. To back this up even further, there was research done by Rob Willer, who is a professor in the Department of Psychology and Sociology at Stanford. He ran this experiment where participants took part in economic games, and they had choices like, do I keep money for myself or contribute it to a shared pot? Do I exploit a loophole for personal gain? Do I behave honestly when cheating is possible? So these are standard, well-validated ways that psychologists measure cooperation. Group cooperation basically means that rather than looking out for your own best interests, you're looking out for the interests of the group as a whole. That's what the word or that group cooperation phrasing means. So what they found was that when gossip was possible, meaning that the participants knew their actions or behavior could be spoken about freely, or that their reputations could circulate, that they were more likely to act in trustworthy ways, to contribute fairly, and to avoid cheating. And the main way that it does that is through reputation awareness. So basically, as human beings, we are highly perceptive to how others see us and whether others trust us and whether we'll be included or excluded in a group dynamic. For that reason, the threat of gossip based on this experiment actually changed people's behavior. So people basically just behaved more cooperatively, i.e., with the best interests of the group at large as opposed to personal interests, just based on the fact that people could share information about their actions or behaviors and circulate a certain rumor or damage their reputation. So yeah, basically gossip creates an informal accountability system, and it's overall helps us decide who is trustworthy. So they call this type of gossip pro-social gossip, and it's considered a good thing. And I think we can understand why. So when I say a good thing, I mean not because it's nice, not because we like advocating for gossiping because we think it's something that's so great that we all need to start doing, but more because it serves a social function. And it actually does kind of have a positive impact on human behavior. Okay, that spiel aside, basically I have gossiped. I have gossiped recently, and I'm not proud of it. I've walked away from it feeling satisfied in the moment, almost unable to stop myself from what I was saying, unconscious, detached from the damage that I might be creating in someone else's life. Yet, yeah, I felt shit, but I also felt satisfied. So I was sitting down and I was like, okay, we need to understand this fucking gossip thing. We all do it. I've been doing it more recently than what I would like to. One of the questions I wrote down was, why is gossip so satisfying? And I have an answer for you. It comes down to the beautiful little ball of mush between the two earlobes, the gray matter that exists up in our skulls in our craniums. Decades of research show that our brains are more alert to negative information, or more perceptive to negative information than positive information. That it is more impactful for our brains. And that's because we are highly attuned to potential risks, to potential threats, because I think ultimately we're just walking around with an archaic reptilian partially. I mean, there's a lot of great things going on in there, but there's a lot of booby traps. I feel like we're so deeply booby trapped by our brains that we have to just become hyper aware of all of these pre-coded little wiring shortcut, short loops, I don't know what to call them, that happen if we're not paying attention. So basically, negative information sticks, and that is why it feels meaningful to us. I found yet another interesting article for you guys. It is called Interpersonal Chemistry Through Negativity, Bonding by Sharing Negative Attitudes About Others. And this was a paper or study published by Jennifer K. Bosson, professor of psychology, and colleagues, which found something interesting. This is also at the University of Oklahoma and University of Texas in Austin. And this is what they found. I'm going to read a quote directly from the article for you. We propose that sharing a negative as compared to a positive attitude about a third party is particularly effective in promoting closeness between people. Yeah. I feel like we've all had that feeling where and there's all these reels on Instagram as well that we find hilarious because we know that it's true. And it's that shared experience with someone where you mutually dislike a third person and you express those grievances to one another. They're basically saying that when two people discover that they dislike the same person, that they feel closer to one another because of that discovery. And more importantly, they feel closer to one another than if they discovered that they like the same person. Now that's interesting. So this effect is especially strong in early relationships or early connections. And it is also more effective when the opinion is not deeply held and it's a mild opinion. So it's not deep hatred for someone. I'm sure people bond over that as well. But it's more mild grievances, mild dislike that can create an exacerbated sense of closeness between people who might not be the best of friends at the outset. The reason for that is that expressing negative opinions carries a social risk. And here is another quote for you from the same article. Gossip behavior both reveals personal information about the gossiper and communicates to the listener that he or she is trusted. Saying something critical about someone else isn't neutral. It exposes your values, it exposes your judgments, and it also exposes you to be judged. It puts you out there, you put out a negative opinion, and you kind of hoping, you're going out on a limb and hoping that the person listening is going to echo what you feel. So that's why it can exacerbate or speed up that sense of closeness. When someone shares gossip with you, what they're saying, based on this article, is that ultimately what you're communicating is that I trust you with this. I think that's true. I've had that feeling. I have had that feeling because in my recent reflection upon gossip, in the moments that I did fucking gossip, guys, I left that situation and I was trembling in my boots because I thought, oh no, okay, yeah, this is also not looking good. Most of my podcast episodes never look good for me. But anyway, I was trembling in my boots because I thought I've gone and said things that are really an overshare of my own personal experience, though. It's not like I'm talking shit about someone. I'm like, this is how I feel to another person. And I had to walk away from that encounter literally praying that I could trust them, because it's so funny. Oh my God, I'm a living example of how this article is true, because we were not the closest friends at the time that I was venting and releasing these feelings out towards this other person. So I was going off venting, and it ended up feeling very gossipy. It ended up feeling quite gross. But I had to walk away from that situation and just be like, look to the stars and look up to the heavens and just say, please, dear God, for someone that I don't really know in the most intimate way, I really pray that I can trust this person. Again, I'm not advocating for gossip. I'm just trying to unpack why we do this shit. Another reason why gossip can feel quite satisfying is because. Just excuse me, I haven't not podcasted in a very long time and my mouth is not working as it should. If that was offensive to your ear holes, I do thoroughly apologize. Another reason why gossiping can feel so satisfying is because it creates in-group versus out-group boundaries, which is essentially this feeling of we versus them. Once again, we go back in time and we reflect upon how human beings evolved into the society that we currently operate in. And this is how. Survival back in the dizzy depended on group membership. Being excluded from a group could literally result in your death. It was like you could starve, you could get killed. We know safety in numbers is a thing. So being accepted by the group is like life or death. And knowing who was with you and who was not is critical. I think this is noteworthy, but this is the same reason why gossip can also turn dark. And that's because we run the risk of dehumanizing the person that we are gossiping about by virtue of creating that divide of we versus them. Gossip can easily slip into a space of bullying or social cruelty, which is not what we want ultimately. So something that was initially developed as a tool for creating safety has now, in our modern era, developed into something that can potentially be quite harmful. I kind of touched on this earlier, but gossip is also apparently another way of us performing a low-stakes intimacy test. It's kind of what I said earlier. Basically, by you opening up and sharing your grievances about someone or sharing your dislikes, you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position. You're exposing your beliefs, your values. But more than that, you are also posing to the person you're sharing this with, do we share these values? Do you share the same viewpoints as me? Are we aligned in this regard? We've also been told our whole lives that gossip is bad. And why is that? I pondered. Just take your little head, shake your brain around in there, because that's kind of how I felt when I read this. And it's the reason we've been taught that gossip is bad is because teaching nuance is difficult. Gossip is not innately bad. As a whole, it serves a function and it actually is positive in a way, depending on how you do it. There's a way to do it in the right way, which we will get to. But if I think of where I first heard about this don't gossip, okay? I have a Christian background. I was extremely Christian at one point in my life. And I feel like it all began there, and it all began in school. So institutions do not want us to decentralize information. Us gossiping poses a threat to institutions because it allows us to communicate outside of their channels. It's a way for us to decentralize communication, destabilize what these institutions' authority is by having conversations that they can't control. I don't want to go down this route entirely, but it is really true. It's something that's worth noting because I personally carry so much judgment around this type of sharing of information. Anytime that I am talking about someone in my life, about my personal experience, I always kind of feel, based on what I've had drummed into my head from my youth, that I've done something wrong and I should be embarrassed or I should be ashamed of myself. Truthfully, there's a reason that we've been taught that gossip is so bad. And I think, again, this is going on the scoreboard, on the leaderboard of yes to gossip, no to gossip. We're going to go yes to gossip because I think sharing information in a decentralized way that might challenge authority, I advocate for that. But yeah, it's not so black and white as I think we were once made to believe. Gossip is nuanced, and it's difficult to teach children that you can gossip, but only in the right way. So it's much easier to say to a child, don't gossip. And that is why gossip has largely been treated as a character flaw. That stings the nostrils. Rather than a social force, which is actually what it is as well. It can be a character flaw if you're doing it in the wrong way. I do believe that. If you're doing it to harm others without clear intentions as to why, in an unconscious way, yes, then it could be a character flaw that you have. So if we are going to XOXO Gossip Girl, how do we do that responsibly is the next part that we need to address. This is what I have for you. Gossip tends to be constructive when it is shared laterally, so between equals. It's grounded in real experience. It serves understanding, safety, or processing. It would survive being said openly. That last one has been the backbone of any gossip I've ever engaged in. My dad, from when I was a young warthog, always said to me, don't say anything about anyone unless you're prepared to say it to their face. That has been something that has rung around my head since I was little. And it's a standard that I've always held myself to. I truly, truly, truly have. And anything that I have said about someone, I will gladly say to their face. I will. And I have, and I will always do that. So I quite enjoyed seeing that. In my research, one of the things that came up was a golden nugget from Norman Wallace, my father. Thanks, Dad. Secondly, gossip tends to be destructive when it exploits someone's vulnerability, it exaggerates or distorts, it exists for personal gain, it creates secrecy, addiction, or group exclusion. And I can also attest to that last point, that sometimes that feeling of creating group exclusion, I can say that is not my highest self coming through, not the best version of Danielle. But I don't know, I guess my shadow side, my darker side, upon reflection, after having engaged in gossip, I can say that potentially that has been a motivating factor for me subconsciously. And it is quite dark, and it can be quite damaging, because truly, even in the modern era, even in this current day and age, to exclude someone from our social circles, granted though, this is the caveat, this is the thing that confaculates me, is that people do need to be held accountable for their actions and thoughts. Unfortunately, if you're going to behave like a tolly, then you're going to have to live with the consequences of that. Nothing I can really do to help you there. But gossiping and damaging someone's reputation and excluding them from group situations or group circles is actually still a very high risk, destructive thing to do. And although it might not be as obvious as being abandoned in the savannas of Africa, where you have to fend for yourself against predators and forage your own food and hunt and take care of yourself in that way by being left alone, psychological isolation, I think, can be equally as damaging. And I don't know if our brains always can tell the difference between someone excluding you from a social situation and feeling psychologically isolated, and what it meant to our ancestors to be abandoned in the middle of the jungle with no one to lean on to support them. So in that regard, yeah, guys, I need to think of a good tagline for this. It's like, oh my word, it just came to me. Gossip with grace. Gossip gracefully. We'll workshop that. The Time for Us team. Hey, are you taking a note? Just write that down for me. Gossip gracefully. We'll think, okay. Thank you, Tiffany. Thanks, my babe. Okay, so the team's taken a note for me, and they and we will be workshopping that. We'll be workshopping that. Okay. And now, where does all of this information leave us? Where? Don't be weird with the listeners. Where does it leave us? Don't sing in people's ears. Where does all of this information leave us? I think it leaves us with the responsibility to acknowledge that we all gossip. I think knowing that gossip is something we have been doing for a very long time as human beings, that it served a purpose in our survival for a very, very long time. Knowing that we do it. I have done it, and I probably will do it again. And I think if you're honest with yourself, you can say the same thing. That means if we're going to do it, we know we're going to do it again. Come on. And I don't think we should shame ourselves for it. I don't think we should judge ourselves for it based on the following. Becoming aware of our intent as to why we're gossiping, doing it responsibly and consciously rather than unconsciously. And I think as much as possible, trying to do it with people that are safe, trying to do it with people you can trust, basing it in reality, not distorting the truth, really taking ownership of the power of the spoken word. It's a very powerful thing. I'm really, really, really feeling like everything that applies to gambling, apply it to gossiping. Do not gossip under the influence. Gossip responsibly. Winners know when to stop. Okay. Thank you for listening to Time Pause. Please like, follow, subscribe, share. I love you all so much. I really do. I really do. I'm not even being facetious. I really love you guys. And to everyone who I saw over December who came up to me and told me they love my podcast and that they're listening, you are the reason that I'm sitting on this couch and I fucking painted this wall purple. You are the reason I have these studio lights on. Thank you and good night.